2.5 years ago, Tsukimichi Moonlit Fantasy captured fans' attention with an interesting take on the isekai genre. But sadly, with the passing of time and the second season coming up right around the corner, it's really hard to remember the journey thus far. Welcome to your Tsukimichi Moonlit Fantasy Season 1 refresher course. I'm gonna get you fully caught up on the story thus far, so let's jump right into it. Tsukimichi Moonlit Fantasy opens up with our protagonist, Makoto. He is a self-proclaimed worst luck isekai ever. He just got done doing some archery classes before heading home, having a bath, finding his father's novel sitting on his desk before taking a nap. And yes, he wakes up before Tsukiyomi. No, he didn't get hit by a truck, though, hey, there's still the chance that maybe a truck flew through his window. He didn't get stabbed while protecting somebody. No, he just appeared before this god. Tsukiyomi claims that his parents are actually isekai'd from another world, and they agree that one day they would send back their most prized possession. Makoto, knowing that that means either him or one of his sisters, bravely decides to take it upon himself to be the one that goes back. At this point, Tsukiyomi does some great things for Makoto. First of all, he gets rid of all of Makoto's lewds. You don't want somebody to stumble upon those. He also gives Makoto a blessing, though at the time, Makoto doesn't know what those blessings are. He also agrees to take a letter that Makoto writes back to his family, before giving Makoto a stern warning. The goddess of the world that he's about to go to is troublesome, but he wants Makoto to be patient with her. Now Makoto, in response to this, claims that he's going to accept her no matter how ridiculous she may be. Words that he's going to regret. Because yes, he's quickly rushed to the presence of this goddess, and this goddess, upon seeing his face, claims that he is absolutely ugly. She's going to end up sending him to her world, but she doesn't want him to spread his seed amongst her beautiful humans. She reluctantly gives him a blessing, which is the ability to understand and read all writing and words of this world he's going to, before dropping him, literally hoping that he'll die when he hits the ground. But thankfully, Tsukiyomi shows up again. Very briefly, tells Makoto one very important thing. Yes, the world that he was from, our world, has this strain that's put upon magic and physical capabilities. And now that he's in this other world, he's going to be pretty darn powerful. But he could still die, and gives him that warning before disappearing. Well, Makoto ends up landing somewhere in the outskirts of the world itself, way at the edge where all the demi-humans actually live. After wandering around for a bit, he ends up running upon this orc named Emma. And Emma's being attacked by a monster. Makoto, not knowing his own power, ends up decimating this monster and terrifying this orc. Even though Emma is terrified of Makoto, she eventually explains that she was on her way to this altar where this dragon lives, this Shin. She's going there in order to sacrifice herself because her tribe believes that this dragon is creating a mist that is pretty much interrupting their ability to grow crops. But Emma wants to thank Makoto for saving her life, so she takes him back to her village. There, he gets a meal. Emma ends up explaining to him how magic works, which he picks up really quickly. They even show him what his level is with this scroll, which is, unfortunately, level 1. And Makoto, in return to all this stuff, decides that he's going to go to this dragon and solve the situation so that Emma doesn't have to sacrifice herself. Upon arriving there, he immediately blasts the location with a spell, which, come to find out, it's actually a bunch of Oni that are there. Shin was not causing this fog that was messing with their crops. It was actually the Onis that were using the name of Shin in order to subjugate the orcs. But his attack ended up releasing the dragon, so Shin comes out and attacks Makoto. Now, during this battle with the dragon, Makoto ends up discovering the blessing that was given to him by Tsukiyomi. It's the ability to pretty much manipulate things within a certain field. And he's able to use this to tell where the dragon's at within its own mists. And after pummeling the heck out of this dragon, the dragon eventually decides to put Makoto within this sort of barrier. This memory capsule that sends Makoto into this dream state, showing him memories that he's very fond of. And Shin is doing this in order to make Makoto stuck in his own happiness. But Makoto quickly realized that the memories that he's seeing are not true. They're memories of his childhood friend that he unfortunately made her cry before he departed from her. So he wakes up out of this, beats Shin more, and Shin eventually says, "Hey, wait, stop attacking me. I really like your memories." See, this dragon Shin is able to see the memories of people, and thus seeing Makoto's memories of his previous life. And she's fascinated by these memories, and thus wants to make a pact with Makoto so that she can continue to see what's in those memories. Well, while they set up a pact between the two of them, Makoto is so powerful that the contract they end up making is an 80-20, thus making the dragon subservient to Makoto, and thus taking the appearance of a human. But the dragon doesn't really care. As long as they get to see these memories of Makoto, they're perfectly fine with this. This dragon is obsessed with historical dramas that are deep within his mind. While Makoto is processing this, the dragon ends up going, hey, I need you to check something out for me, and opens up this mist gate to this Demi Plane that they kind of control. She claims this Demi Plane is typically dark and an empty place, but inside now is this lush land that's full of vegetation and resources, kind of giving the indication that it's now pretty much embodying everything that Makoto would see a world would have in it. There's fruits in it that Makoto recognizes, but the dragon doesn't. But knowing that this is a plane of existence that is separate from the world that he was just in, Makoto realized that this is a great place for him to set up a town and a civilization where he can pretty much be out of the reach of the goddess. So after returning to the orcs and explaining the situation of Shin to them, Shin quickly, on behalf of Makoto, decides to invite all the orcs back to that demi-plane, where they can build their village and have tons of resources. And thus begins the building of Makoto's empire. It's at this point that Shin does a few things. First of all, Shin decides to take it upon herself to assign Makoto as being the lord of this land. Additionally, she creates a fragment of herself that will protect the lands. And additionally, since he loves the memories of Makoto, tries to figure out a way of producing a physical media of all the memories that she's tapping into within Makoto, essentially creating DVDs of the period piece dramas that she's loving watching. On Makoto's side, he's discovering more about his abilities. He has magic, which includes water, darkness, fire, earth, and thunder. And additionally, he decides to name the ability that was given to him by Tsukiyomi, which he calls it Kai. As mentioned earlier, with this Kai ability, he's able to manipulate things within a certain field. He's also able to kind of make it to where it wraps around himself or objects to increase its strength. And he experiments with this by actually having it wrap around a blade itself, which makes it to where it can cut through pretty much trees like a knife through butter. Interestingly enough, an orc mentions the fact that his field, his Kai ability, doesn't seem like it's using mana, which kind of explains why Shin earlier didn't notice that Makoto was using it. He also discovers that he's able to use his Kai ability to heal other people, but he's unable to use it to heal himself. Well, cutting forward, the demi-plane ends up getting attacked by a gigantic spider, what the dwarves call the Black Spider of Disaster. This spider seems like it just wants to consume everything and seemingly likes pain. And so yes, when it comes into the demi-plane and Makoto fights it, it ends up liking being beat so much by Makoto and ends up agreeing to make a contract with him as well. Following this, Makoto decides to assign a name to his new servants. He names the dragon Shin as Tomoe, while the spider Mio, and it seems as if doing so grants them additional power. Additionally, both Tomoe and Mio decide to start inviting new races into the demi-plane. We get the dwarves, who are craftsmen, the lizardmen, who serve as the fighters, and additionally the elk race. And while the demi-plane is thriving, Makoto has a mission in his mind. He decides that he wants to look into the journey of his parents. He knows that his parents were once from this world, and he wants to find out what they did in the world, what their history was in this particular world. So that requires him to pretty much leave the demi-plane, leave the areas where the demi-humans are at, and yes, travel to the human villages. But yes, upon arriving there, he's quickly chased off. It comes to find out, yes, not only is he ugly and seen as having an appearance of a demi-human, but additionally he has a massive aura about himself. One that looks like he's pretty much like multiple demon lords walking towards a village. That's why the humans panicked and attacked him. So he pretty much has to get equipment to place upon himself, made by the dwarves, that will absorb his mana, and that way he doesn't look like a walking demon lord. Now with a disguise, a mask that cover up his ugly face, something to absorb his aura, he finally is able to enter the human village. And yes, there, everybody is beautiful. He has a side task that he wants to actually begin trades between the demi-plane and the humans, bringing all the resources, the things the dwarves are making, fruits, vegetables that aren't seen in this particular world, and sell them to the humans. While in town, he ends up freeing this girl named Toa, who looks just like his childhood friend from his previous life. Tomoe and Mio decide to have a competition between each other and pretty much decimate the entire village, before Makoto and party ends up leaving the village to go to the next town. At the Adventure Guild in the next village, Makoto ends up running into a request made by a company called Rembrandt. It was in order to find a very rare material that Rembrandt needs in order to create a cure for his family. See, Rembrandt owns a trading company, and he has a lot of enemies. We find out later on this is due to the fact that Rembrandt makes a lot of requests that people do that ends up getting them injured or killed. So he's made a lot of enemies, and it seems like one of them decided to put a curse upon his wife and his two daughters. Makoto ends up inviting one of the adventurers that he met along his journey, Hazel, to come in, create a cure, and help them in actually administering it. And it seems like during this entire time, Makoto is kind of struggling between the fact that it seems like most of the employees of Rembrandt seem to love him, Well, it seems like people on the outside want him dead. So while Makoto wants to do business with Rembrandt, he kind of is keeping him at arm's length. Eventually, Makoto will end up joining the Merchant Guild. At the same time, he enacts his plan to create what he calls the Illusory City. The idea behind the Illusory City is that most of the trades that Makoto wants to do from the Demi Plane is items that people are unfamiliar with. It's fruits and vegetables that nobody knows. It's equipment that the dwarves are making that are super powerful. So in order to gain people's trust, they're going to essentially invite adventurers into the illusory world, which is an area within the Demiplane. They'll sell the goods to the adventurers, and then have the adventurers return back to their villages and sell them, and spread rumors of the Illusory City. While putting this whole plan into place, Emma eventually confronts Makoto about a new problem. It seems like the warriors of the different races within the Demiplane have lost confidence because when they train against Mio and Tomoe and Makoto, they beat the living crap out of them. So Tomoe decides to have a tournament to have them all fight each other, before eventually assigning them to have regular bouts between each other, and essentially get rid of the stigma around not wanting to show their tactics to other races. After getting that sorted out, Makoto moves forward on his plans of actually having a shop outside of the Demiplane, and he needs Rembrandt's help for this. And Rembrandt, seemingly sketchy, decides to give him space within one of his shops. While the Demiplane is celebrating the fact that they've opened a shop in the outside world, Tomoe and Mio have a shock of their life. Makoto has died. Rushing to the place that they last sensed him, they're relieved to actually find him alive. Through a conversation between Makoto and Tomoe, they discovered that Makoto, while doing his archery practice, was imagining himself assimilating with everything between himself and his target. This caused him to extend his consciousness to a distant target and reconstituting himself. Since people only diffuse their consciousness when they actually die, this essentially meant that Makoto was dying and rebirthing himself over and over again. And this phenomenon of rebirth was essentially massively increasing his mana pool. Tomoe claimed that at the point where he was at now, he had the mana level of a goddess. This also meant the Demiplane that we're in, which is pretty much a creation of both Makoto and Tomoe, had massively increased. Like, it has its own galaxy now. Now, the problem with this is they've been trying to keep his mana pool and his aura kind of subsided. At the level that it was at now, Tomoe was sure the goddess was probably going to step in now, which meant, yes, that Makoto has to get more items and rings and everything put on him in order to absorb all that, because otherwise it's going to be noticeable. With that whole situation out of the way, Makoto decides that he wants to stock his new shop in the outside world with the same potion that was used to cure Rembrandt's family. So he's going to need a very rare material, which is pretty much known for being inside this one forest. Now, the forest is actually protected by the forest ogres, and while trying to look for the material, he ends up running into a band of them, and additionally being followed by a group of adventurers. Well, he ends up taking care of the adventurers by sending them through a mist gate back to the Demiplane. There, they're captured and held captive. At the same time, he ends up going to the forest ogres' village, where he ends up meeting their chiefs. While the forest ogres were being kind to Makoto and welcoming and having a celebration and everything, all for the hopes of actually killing him while his guard was down, Makoto ends up discovering that one of the leaders was actually working for the demons. Additionally, another member of their village was actually being possessed by a lich. Now, this is where things get interesting, because this lich that Makoto ends up defeating and taking back to the Demiplane has been seeking out knowledge. And this knowledge is all for the hope of becoming a Grant. Tomoe explains that Grants are actually people that have discovered outside worlds and have traveled to outside worlds. So yes, Makoto's parents are essentially what they call Grants. Now, we don't know why exactly Shiki is seeking out to become a Grant, but that's the thing that he has pretty much dedicated his entire living life and his undead life in order to acquire massive amounts of knowledge and power in order to travel worlds. Tomoe goes on to explain that it's very difficult to travel worlds. Now, yes, in the past, people have traveled worlds, but these days it's more difficult. Even if the goddess herself of this world allowed a rift to be open to travel to another world, it's still only like a 10% chance of even surviving. Yes, a lot of information that, unfortunately, this lich did not want to hear. Still, like usual, Tomoe tells the lich, hey, make a contract, Makoto. You like knowledge? You want information? Go, just make a pact with Makoto, which, yes, he agrees to. Makoto ends up naming the lich Shiki, and the celebrations are cut short because Tomoe suddenly collapses, and a loud explosion happens nearby in the Demiplane. Rushing to the location, Makoto discovers a lot of injured people and children. While investigating the situation, Makoto ends up tapping into Tomoe's ability. He's able to see the memories of the adventurer that he actually sent to the Demiplane when they were back in the forest. What he ends up seeing is that this adventurer, once they arrived inside the Demiplane, they broke out and went into their artifact storage. This storage location where they dispose of very powerful artifacts, and yes, rings that Makoto has been wearing in order to absorb his mana. After a fight broke out, this adventurer chucked one of the rings and it exploded. The explosion reopened a mist gate that allowed her to return back to the outside world. And Makoto, in a fit of rage, realizing that they've lost not only one of their orcs, but additionally the fragment of Tomoe, decides to chase after that adventurer, where he kills her. While standing there with a blood-coated dagger, he's reminded of a sensation that he only remembers from his previous world, the sadness of death. This whole situation changes Makoto's perspective of the world itself. Upon arriving in this world, he understood this world was kind of weird because of the goddess. Again, the humans are all beautiful, and they're favored by the goddess, and everybody else is treated terribly. He just knew this was going to be a messed up world. But he understands now that he can't make that be his excuse anymore. He actually needs to learn more about the world itself. So after apologizing to the family of the orc, after everybody mourns the death of the fragment and the orc, Makoto even creates a separate area in the Demi Plane that serves as the illusory world where people will come to that's separate from the citizens. Makoto decides that he's going to go to an academy to learn more about the world itself and the goddess. Well, yes, at the same time, hopefully learning more about his parents' past in the world. But unfortunately, while traveling to the academy, the goddess finally spots Makoto and teleports him into a battlefield. At this same exact moment, the demons were moving forward with their attacks on the humans, and the goddess decided to put Makoto right smack dab in the middle of it. He's quickly attacked by two humans who are actually working for the demons. Sophia Bulga, the Dragon Slayer, who's actually the highest level person in the world, and additionally Lancer, or Mutsurugi. These two claim that Makoto is a disciple of the goddess, even though he claims that he isn't. Well, after exchanging blows for a little bit, Sophia decides to put on a ring that is supposedly able to negate the blessings of the goddess. In return, Makoto decides to finally remove all of his limiters. Yes, remove all these rings that are essentially absorbing all of his mana and just absolutely unleash full-on power upon them. Not only does he end up defeating Lancer and Sophia, but he also pretty much wipes out quite a bit of the armor as well. After returning back to the Demi Plane and meeting up with his companions, they pretty much come to the conclusion that yes, the goddess probably spotted him and threw him over there in order for him to destroy the demon army. Now, while yes, there is a fear that the goddess is now trying to manipulate Makoto, this makes him want to go to the academy even more. He learned that during his fight with Lancer and Sophia that he has a lot of limits to his magical capability. And he knows that the only reason that he defeated them is because he pretty much unleashed all these mana-absorbing rings on them. While Mio and Tomoe obviously want to go with Makoto now because he was in danger, he decides that he wants to keep them in the Demi Plane so that they're out of the reach of the goddess. Instead, he'll go to the academy with only Shiki at his side. And that pretty much wraps the story. We get a brief shot of the shop that they opened up with Rembrandt's help. They're using these crazy sales tactics to bring in people, even though, yes, the stuff is being crafted by demi-humans and they don't trust a lot of the materials there. Makoto would later learn that the battlefield that he was placed upon had a ton of casualties between the humans and the demons, as well as the fact that on that battlefield, there was two other individuals there that were from his previous world, possibly other disciples that were sent there by the goddess. And that's the story so far for Tsukimichi Moonlit Fantasy. I hope you guys enjoy this video. As always, it's a new type of video that I've never really done before, recap videos, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Let me know in the comments down below if you'd like to see more of these types of videos in the future for other series that have multiple seasons. It takes quite a bit to kind of rewatch the whole thing, but I needed a refresher as well, so it kind of helps me out as well to remember everything that happened 2.5 years ago with the first season. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video as always. If you did, make sure that like button down below, comment. Let me know what you think of the series so far, if you're going to be checking out the second season, or if you've never checked out the series before and this is just giving you an excuse to check it out. Let me know. Additionally, if you're new to the channel, make sure that subscribe button to check out my content. I do news reviews, first impressions, top list. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you want to support the channel more and like this content, I have a Patreon link, tips link, super thanks, membership button down below. Greatly appreciate everybody does, and y'all take care.